Hey guys, it's Mr. Fred, aka the floating head that appears on these videos, aka your chess coach. Alright, so today we're going to be talking about opening principles, or rather in this video. So first of all, what's a chess principle? A chess principle is a guideline to help you choose the best moves. In every chess situation, there are too many moves for you to consider every single one. For example, in the first 4 moves of a chess game, there's 318,979,564,000 possible combinations of moves, just in the first 4 moves of a game. You can't think through all of those. So you need opening principles, principles that apply to the opening, to help you narrow down your choices and make the best moves. So let's get into what those opening principles are. Okay, so I don't want you to get distracted by what's actually going on in a specific situation or game. I want you to have an overall understanding of these opening principles. So for now, we're just going to deal with one set of pieces, the white pieces. We're going to forget about the other side of the board. Okay, the first 2 chess principles kind of go hand in hand. 1, develop your pieces. 2, play for the center, or try to control the center. Okay? So first of all, when I say develop your pieces, which pieces am I referring to? I'm not referring to every piece. I'm not referring to your pawns, and I'm not referring to your king. I'm referring to your rooks, your knights, your bishops, and your queen. Okay, so when we talk about developing, which means getting a piece involved, when we talk about getting pieces involved in the opening, I'm not referring to pawns, and I'm not referring to your king. Those other pieces, your knights and your bishops, your rooks and your queen, those should be your priority for developing. Okay? The second chess opening principle that goes hand in hand with development is play for the center. So when we develop our pieces, we have a goal. It's not just to get them involved, it's also to help to make sure that they're helping us control the center. Okay, so let's look at what this might look like. I'm just going to do like kind of an ideal setup. Now, obviously, you're going to adjust based on what your opponent does. But for now, we're not going to think about that. We're just going to kind of conceptualize what strong development looks like. So e4 occupies one of the 4 central squares. By the way, when I say control the center, I'm referring to d4, d5, e4, and e5. These 4 squares are the most important. Okay? The reason why that is from the center, your pieces have the greatest mobility and activity. They have the greatest ability to influence the game. A knight on one of these central squares has 8 possible moves. On their starting square, they only have 3 possible moves. That's just a good example. That applies for every piece. So whoever controls the center is probably going to win the game. They're going to have the best tactical opportunities. They're going to have the best opportunities to win material and improve their position. All right, so e4 occupies a central square and also influences d5. Also opens up lines for the light squared bishop and the queen to develop. All right, knight f3, developing towards the center, influencing d4 and e5. Knight c3, developing towards the center, protecting this e4 pawn and influencing d5. d4, occupying a central square, influencing e5, and opening up a line for this dark squared bishop. Bishop c4, making space for a kingside castle and putting your bishop on a stronger diagonal and influencing this d5 square. Bishop f4, same thing. Again, preparing for a queenside castle if you decide to go that route. Relocating your bishop to a stronger diagonal, influencing e5. Queen d2, again, getting another piece out of the way for a queenside castle, backing up your dark squared bishop. Queenside castle, getting your king to safety, getting him out of the center, which might open up, and there might be some tactics here, putting him behind a wall of bodyguards, and bringing your rook, who was previously in no man's land on the corner of the board, Now he's activated. Now he's involved in the game. He is bearing down on the d file and backing up this d4 pawn. The queen and the rook now are coordinated. They're working together. They formed a battery, a powerful battery. And now rook 8, oops, oh geez, oh geez. Now rook h e1, notice how I said h first because both rooks could go to e1. Rook h e1, bringing this rook to the center, backing up this e4 pawn. So this is an ideal setup. We've developed all of our major pieces. I should say powerful pieces, because in chess, major pieces refers to your queen and your rook. So I'm going to say powerful pieces, which includes your minor pieces too. Knights and bishops are called the minor pieces, queens and rook the major pieces. So you've developed all your major and minor pieces, and you have a strong control of the center. You have a strong influence on the center. And everything is dedicated to the center right now. Okay? So those are the first two rules. Develop your pieces, meaning your powerful pieces, and play for the center. Okay, so the next two rules the next two principles go hand in hand as well. And those are, don't move a piece twice until everyone's involved, unless you have a tactic. A tactic is a forcing set of moves that wins material or wins a positional advantage. In other words, a tactic is something that if you execute it, your opponent has no choice. No matter what they do, you're going to win material. So unless you have that kind of opportunity, you shouldn't be breaking opening principles. So let's look at what that looks like in a game situation. Say pawn up. And let's say move this knight. And now let's say white decides to come here. I've seen you guys do this. So there is no, in this position, there is no tactic. There is no forcing set of moves to give white a material or positional advantage, right? So by moving a piece twice without a tactic, before getting their other bishops involved, before getting their rooks involved, before getting castled, before getting their queen involved, white has just broken an opening principle. And black can deal with this particular threat very simply. How about just h6 and kicking the knight back to f3? So this is the exact same position that we were in before the knight came to g5, except what's different? One, black got in this extra move, h6, which takes away a square, an important square from white. And if he castles kingside, it also gives his king an escape square against back rank mates late in the game. But that's not even the most important part. The most important part is it's now black's move. It's almost like white gave away a free move. Let's look at it again. So here's the situation originally, and then white breaks the opening principle and moves a piece twice. And now it's almost the same situation, except it's black's move. So, in other words, white is wasting very valuable time. In the beginning of a chess game, every single move should be helping you develop pieces and control the center. You can't afford to waste time. So now after black plays, let's say here, black now has a lead in development. Black has 3 pieces out, white has 2 pieces. White is the one that's supposed to be ahead. They get to move first, but because they broke an opening principle, they're now behind the 8 ball. All right, now let's look at what happens when you bring your queen out too early. So this is actually a playable opening if you know the theory. I don't recommend it for black at your level. This is called the Scandinavian opening. But let's see what happens. So I can play knight c3 here. So I'm developing a knight towards the center, and at the same time I'm attacking black's queen. So now the black queen has to move, has to get out of the way. Otherwise, they're going to lose their queen. And so while black is busy moving around their queen, I'm going to be developing my pieces and attacking the queen again. So now I play knight f3, and I'm hitting the queen again. Let's say, I don't know, let's say the queen comes here. Now I can play d4. Getting my other central pawn involved, and I just opened up a diagonal for my light squared bishop that attacks the queen. So let's say black moves the queen to f6. Then I can develop my dark squared bishop and attack the queen again. Maybe black comes here to g6. Well, then I'm going to develop my light squared bishop to d3. So this is an extreme example. In other words, like, I didn't make the best moves black could have made, but I want to show you what can typically happen when you bring your queen out too early. Your opponent is going to have the opportunity to kick around your queen and at the same time develop their pieces. And in this situation, this would be a crushing advantage for white. So even though white hasn't won any material yet, as the game progresses, it's going to be much easier for white to win. Okay, so you don't want to bring your queen out too early. And this is related to the principle we just discussed, moving the same piece twice before getting everyone else involved. When you move your queen out too early, chances are you're going to be forced to move your queen twice in the opening. You're going to be forced to move a piece more than once before everyone's involved. That's why it's a bad idea. So typically we want to bring our knights and our bishops out first, then our rooks and queen. So knights and bishops first, and a lot of times these central pawns. So let me just give you an example of when it makes sense to move the same piece twice before everyone's involved because you have a tactic. So we'll start with just a really simple example. Let's say white develops here, which is a playable move. And let's say black comes here, thinking, okay, I'm going to challenge this bishop. I'm going to open up a line for this light squared bishop, and I'm going to occupy central pawn, central square. But they didn't properly count or calculate that there's only one defender and there's two attackers. So here I just moved the bishop twice. Once, twice. But I had a tactic. I forced white to give up a pawn by capturing the pawn. Now that's a very simple example, but it's instructive. So here's the recap. 1. Develop your pieces. And by that I mean your knights and bishops, your rooks, and your queen. Develop your knights and bishops typically before your rooks and queens. So number 1, develop. Number 2, play for the center. Those 4 central squares are the most important squares in a chess game, particularly the opening. Everything you do should be in the opening should be helping you to control those central squares. 3, don't move a piece twice unless all your powerful pieces are involved. Unless you have a tactic. Unless you have a forcing set of moves or a forcing move to win material or a positional advantage. And 4, don't bring your queen out too early, because there's a good chance she's going to get kicked around, and you're going to be giving your opponent the opportunity to develop his or her pieces, while you are just forced to dance around with your queen. And then 5, even though I didn't mention it previously in this video, it's pretty straightforward. Castle early. That gets your king to safety, and it's usually the most efficient way to get your rook involved in the game by developing him to the center. All right, that's it, guys. Good luck practicing.